The Architect of Grief, a Detective Norah Voss thriller. There is a particular kind of grief that doesn't look like grief. It looks like composure. It looks like a man who answers questions clearly, who makes eye contact, who says all the right things in all the right order. It looks like someone who has been through something terrible and is handling it with admirable dignity. Norah Voss had learned, over 11 years of detective work across 2 countries and 4 cities. That admirable dignity in the immediate aftermath of violent loss was the single most reliable warning sign she knew. Real grief was ugly. Real grief forgot to button its shirt. Real grief called you by the wrong name and asked the same question 4 times because the brain couldn't hold new information while it was busy trying to survive the thing that had just happened to it. Admirable dignity was a performance, and the man sitting across from her in interview room 2 of Toronto's 52 division on the morning of February 14th, Valentine's Day, which Nora noted and filed, was performing beautifully. His name was Marcus Hale. His wife had been dead for 6 hours. And he had not once, asked Nora how she died. Part 1. The Body on the Bridge. The call came in at 4:47 a.m. Nora was in Toronto on a fellowship, a 3-month research posting with the Toronto Police Service's Behavioral Sciences Unit, studying cross-border patterns in domestic homicide. She had been in the city for 6 weeks. She had been sleeping badly, the way she always slept badly in new cities, and she was on her first coffee of the morning when her liaison officer, Detective Sergeant Priya Anand, knocked on the door of her borrowed office. "We've got one," Priya said, "and it is yours if you want it." Nora looked up. "Talk to me, female victim, 29. Found on the Bloor Street Viaduct, the luminous Vale side. Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Someone staged it to look like a jump." Priya leaned against the doorframe. "Except jumpers don't get hit in the back of the head before they go over. Who found her?" "Maintenance crew doing early inspection of the barrier panels. She was caught on the lower infrastructure. She didn't make it to the water." A pause. "Someone threw her." Nora set down her coffee. $4.99. Wallet in her coat pocket. Celine Hale, Nani Marchetti address in Rosedale. Priya's expression shifted slightly. Her husband called her in missing at 4 a.m. 47 minutes before we found her. Nora was already reaching for her coat. The Bloor Street Viaduct in February was a particular kind of brutal. The wind coming off the Don Valley below was sharp enough to make your eyes water before you'd taken 3 steps onto the bridge. The luminous Vale, the suicide prevention barrier installed in 2003, rose 9 meters on either side. Thousands of steel cables that caught the pre-dawn light and turned it into something that might have been beautiful under different circumstances. Celine Hale was not beautiful in the way the viaduct was. She was 30 feet below the road surface, caught on a maintenance platform, and she had been there for several hours judging by the temperature of her skin when the forensic team reached her. She was wearing a red dress under her coat. On Valentine's Day, Nora stood on the bridge and looked down at her for a long time. She thought, someone brought her here dressed like that. She thought, this is not a crime of passion, this was planned. She thought the husband called her in missing at 4 a.m., not worried, not panicked, called her in. Like he was filing a report, she went to talk to Marcus Hale. Part 2. The husband. Marcus Hale was 34 years old, a structural engineer at one of Toronto's most prominent architecture firms, and he was objectively a striking man, tall, square-jawed, the kind of effortless physical presence that rooms noticed. He had dark hair and light gray eyes, and he sat in interview room 2 with his hands folded on the table in front of him, like a man waiting for a meeting to start. He had called a lawyer before calling anyone else. The lawyer, a woman named Diana Chu, expensive suit, expensive watch, sat beside him and said nothing yet. Nora sat across from them both. She did not speak immediately. She let the room breathe for a moment, watching Marcus Hale watch her with those pale, composed eyes. "Mr. Hale," she said finally, "I am Detective Norah Voss. I am very sorry about your wife." "Thank you," he said, measured, appropriate. "Can you walk me through last night?" He and Celine had attended a Valentine's Day dinner, a reservation at Canoe, the restaurant on the 54th floor of the TD Bank Tower, 7 p.m. Dinner had ended around 9:30 a.m. They had taken a car home to their house in Rosedale. Celine had seemed quiet on the ride back. He attributed it to tiredness. She had gone upstairs. He had stayed in his study to finish some work. When he came to bed at midnight, she was not there. He assumed she'd fallen asleep in the guest room. She did that sometimes when she couldn't sleep and didn't want to disturb him. At 4 a.m. he woke, checked, found she wasn't in the house, called her phone. No answer, called police. It was a perfect account. Sequential, detailed, emotionally calibrated. The right amount of concern in the right places. "Mr. Hale," Nora said, "what was Celine wearing when you last saw her?" A fractional pause. "I am not sure. Something dark, I think. She'd changed out of her dinner dress." Nora looked at him steadily. "She was found in a red dress." Something moved across his face. "Fast, gone. I didn't know that." "What was her mood like at dinner?" "Quiet. A little distracted." He paused. "We'd had some tension recently. Nothing unusual for a marriage." "What kind of tension?" Tiana Chu put a hand on his arm. Marcus Hale looked at it, then at Nora. "The usual kind," he said. Part 3. Celine Marchetti Hale, the evidence would show, was not the woman her husband's account suggested. She was not quiet. She was not vague. She was not the kind of woman who faded into the background of her own life. She had a PhD in art history from the University of Toronto. She ran a small but respected gallery on Queen Street West. Gallery Marchetti, named for herself, not for her husband. She had a reputation in the city's arts community for having opinions and being unafraid to say them aloud. Her staff, 3 people, all of whom Priya interviewed by noon, described her in terms that clustered around the same qualities: sharp, generous, funny, fiercely independent. "She wasn't the kind of person things happened to," said her assistant, a young woman named B.O.C., who had been crying since she arrived. "She was the kind of person who made things happen." "Was she happy?" Nora asked. Bia was quiet for a moment. She was working something out in the last few months. She seemed like someone who'd made a decision but hadn't told anyone yet. "What kind of decision?" "I don't know." Bea looked at her hands. She bought new notebooks, 3 of them, all at once. She only did that when she was starting something big. Nora went to the gallery. Gallery Marchetti was closed, obviously. But Priya had the keys and the warrant, and they spent 2 hours going through it. The office at the back was organized the way a particular kind of mind organizes things. Not neat, exactly, but meaningful. Systems that made sense from the inside. The desk had 3 drawers. The top 2 contained the ordinary contents of a working life. The third was locked. It took a locksmith 11 minutes. Inside, one of the new notebooks, and a manila envelope. Nora put on gloves and opened the notebook first. The first page had 4 words written in a precise, angular hand: "He is not real." Part 4. What the notebook said. They read the notebook at the precinct. Nora and Priya side by side at Nora's borrowed desk, taking turns with pages. It was dated. It went back 4 months. And it was, Nora thought, the most methodical private document she had read since Claire Calloway's emails, except where Claire had been writing toward feeling. Celine had been writing toward proof. Celine Hale had become convinced, over the course of approximately 6 months, that her husband was not who he said he was. Not in the dramatic sense, not a spy, not a fugitive. Something more specific and more disturbing. She had begun to notice, 18 months into their marriage, small inconsistencies in his personal history, a hometown that didn't match a childhood photograph, a university he mentioned attending that had no record of him, a sister he referenced occasionally who, when Celine had tried to find her, didn't appear to exist. She had not confronted him. Instead, she had started writing things down. Feb 2, he mentioned the cottage on Lake Simcoe again, his family's cottage. I asked him the address, just casually, said I wanted to look it up on the map. He gave me an address. I looked it up. The property is owned by a couple named Bertrand. It has been owned by the Bertrands since 1987. Marcus would have been 7. February 9, I asked his colleague Tom at the firm dinner about Marcus's time in Vancouver. Tom looked confused. Said Marcus had been in Toronto his whole career as far as he knew. Marcus laughed it off, said Tom had a terrible memory. Tom didn't argue. But I watched Tom's face. February 19, I found a passport, not his current one, another one, in a box in the basement that I was never told about. Different name. Same photograph. Nora read that 3 times. Different name, Priya said quietly. Different name, Nora confirmed. The passport. Celine had photographed it carefully before replacing it, showed Marcus Hale's face above the name Thomas Ray Callum, issued in British Columbia, expired 2019. Run it, Nora said. Priya was already on the phone. Nora opened the manila envelope. Inside a single printed page, a news article from the Vancouver Sunday dated March 2018. The headline read, "Wife of local businessman dies in apparent accident. Foul play not ruled out." The businessman's name was Thomas Callum. His wife's name had been Andrea Moy Callum. She had been 27 years old. She had fallen from the Capilano suspension bridge on a Sunday morning in March. The case had gone cold in August of the same year. Nora sat back in her chair, she thought. He has done this before. She thought Celine knew, and she didn't run. She built a case. She thought, why didn't she run? She opened the notebook to the last entry, February 13th, the night before she died. The night of the Valentine's Day dinner. Tonight he made a reservation at Canoe, 54th floor. I have been thinking about what that means. The height, the date, the care he takes with details when he has decided something. I think he has decided something. I think I have run out of time to decide for myself. I am leaving the notebook and the envelope at the gallery. If something happens to me, find B. She will know where to look. His real name is Thomas Callum. Vancouver, 2018. There was another woman. I loved him. I want that on record somewhere. I loved who I thought he was, and I am not sure where that love goes now. It doesn't just disappear. That is the cruelest part. If I don't come home tonight, I need someone to know that I did not jump. Part 5, Thomas Callum. The Vancouver file took 3 hours to pull, with Priya working the interagency request while Nora went back to interview room 2. Marcus Hale Thomas Callum was still there, still composed. The lawyer had ordered coffee. He was drinking it with the patience of a man who believed he would be leaving shortly. Nora sat down across from him. She put nothing on the table. She folded her hands. "Tell me about Vancouver," she said. The composure didn't break, but something behind it shifted. She saw it the way you see movement behind glass, a recalibration, a new assessment of the situation. "I've never lived in Vancouver," he said. "Thomas," Nora said. A silence that lasted exactly 4 seconds. Diana Chu put down her coffee. "Detective, his name is Thomas Ray Callum," Nora said pleasantly. "Born in Kelowna, British Columbia, 1989. He lived in Vancouver from 2014 to 2018, during which time he was married to a woman named Andrea Moy. Andrea died in March 2018. The case was never solved." She kept her eyes on his face. "He came to Toronto in late 2018. Changed his name legally to Marcus James Hale in 2019. Met Celine Marchetti in 2020. Married her in 2022. Thomas Callum looked at her with his pale gray eyes. "I'd like a moment with my client," Diana Chu said. "Of course." Nora stood. "Take all the time you need." She moved to the door, then turned back with a particular unhurried quality she'd developed for exactly these moments. "She wrote about you, you know, Celine. In a notebook she kept for 4 months." She paused. "She said she loved you. She wanted that on record. Even at the end, she wanted that on record." She watched his face. And there was the thing she'd been waiting for since 4:47 a.m. Not guilt, not fear, not grief. A flicker of something that looked almost like admiration. She left him sitting there. Part 6, The Architecture of a Lie. Priya met her in the hallway with a tablet. "Vancouver's sending everything," she said, "but I've got the basics," she scrolled. Thomas Ray Callum. Real background checks out. Degree in structural engineering from UBC, which is consistent with his current career. Parents deceased. No siblings, which tracks with Celine's note about the sister who doesn't exist. Andrea Moy Callum. Married Thomas in 2016. Died March 11, 2018. Official cause: accidental fall from Capilano Suspension Bridge. No witnesses. Thomas was at a work conference in Calgary. Confirmed alibi. Priya looked up. Airtight. Until now it was. The Vancouver team never fully closed it. Lead detective at the time, a woman named Sergeant Kiko Watanabe, flagged it as suspicious but couldn't make anything stick. Priya paused. "I've got her on the phone in 20 minutes. I'll be there." Nora started walking. "What does his financials look like?" Celine owned the gallery outright, inherited from her family. It is worth approximately $2.4 million. Her estate, including the Rosedale house, which is in her name, totals somewhere around $4 million. Priya kept pace beside her. She had a will, updated 8 months ago. Before or after she started the notebook, Priya checked. 2 weeks before. Nora stopped walking. "She knew 8 months ago," she said. "She updated the will and then she started the notebook." "Who is the beneficiary?" "Her sister Gabriella Marchetti, not the husband." Priya's voice was careful. "She cut him out 8 months ago and didn't tell him." Nora thought about that. A woman who had discovered something monstrous about the man she'd married, who had not run, had not confronted, had not gone to the police, who had instead quietly rewritten her will, started a meticulous record, and hidden the evidence where someone she trusted would find it. She was building a case, Nora said. She was going to go to the police herself. She just needed more time. He ran out of patience first, or he found out about the will. Nora started walking again. Pull the will's filing date and cross-reference it with anything that changed in their behavior in the weeks after. Dinner reservations, travel, joint purchases. I want to know if he knew. Part 7. Kaiko. Sergeant Kaiko Watanabe of the Vancouver Police Department was 61 years old, recently retired, and she answered Priya's call on the second ring as if she had been expecting it for years. "I knew someone would call eventually," she said. Her voice was dry and precise. "I kept the file in my desk for 4 years after I retired. My husband made me move it to the garage last spring." "Tell me about Thomas Callum," Nora said. "Thomas Callum was the most frightening person I interviewed in 30 years of police work," Watanabe said. "And I want to be specific about that word, frightening. Not because he was volatile or aggressive, because he was completely, utterly, structurally calm. You could not find the bottom of him. You suspected him for Andrea's death. I knew it was him. I could not prove it." A pause. "He had an alibi in Calgary, 12 witnesses, hotel keycard records, a conference presentation on video. It was perfect. Too perfect. Number, that is what I kept telling my superiors, and they kept telling me I was wrong. It was exactly the right amount of perfect, not theatrical. Just solid. She paused. He is a structural engineer. He builds things that don't fall down. His alibis have the same quality. How did Andrea die? Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Then the fall of silence. The Capilano Bridge is 70 meters above the canyon. By the time she hit, the fall was the cause of death. But the trauma came first. He was in Calgary, Watanabe agreed. Which means he had help, or he had a method I never found, or I was wrong and he didn't do it. A pause. I was not wrong. He is in Toronto, Nora said. His wife died this morning, same method. A long silence. His wife now, Watanabe said quietly. What was she like? Nora thought about the notebook. The 3 new notebooks bought all at once, the locked drawer, the last entry. I did not jump. She was the kind of person who made things happen, Nora said. Andrea was too, Watanabe said. That was the pattern I couldn't prove. He chose women who were stronger than him, and then he took them apart very slowly, and then he took them all the way. Why? What did he get from it? Watanabe was quiet for a moment. I spent a long time thinking about that. I talked to a forensic psychologist about it, off the record. She said some people, a specific, rare kind of person, experience other people's strength as a personal insult. Not jealousy exactly. Something more like offense. Like your strength is a comment on their emptiness. She paused. He married women who were full of something, and he couldn't stand it. Nora sat with that, the alibi, she said. For Andrea. Walk me through it. Watanabe did. The conference in Calgary, 12 colleagues, the hotel key card, the presentation video, all confirmed. When did the conference start? Nora asked. Friday morning. Andrea died Saturday night. And Thomas arrived Friday morning. Thursday evening, actually. Checked in Thursday at 11 p.m. Nora went still. The conference started Friday. He arrived Thursday. Yes, he said he wanted to settle in, review his presentation. So he was in Calgary Thursday night, confirmed by the hotel. And Andrea died Saturday. Yes, that is a 36-hour window between his arrival and her death, Nora said. What time did he check into the hotel on Thursday? A pause while Watanabe found it. 11:17 p.m. Vancouver to Calgary is a 1-hour flight. Last flight out of Vancouver Thursday would be, 9 p.m., 9:30 a.m. Where are you going with this? What if he wasn't in Vancouver when he flew to Calgary? Nora said. What if he'd already been somewhere else for 24 hours? Somewhere he needed to be to set something up. She paused. You confirmed he was in Calgary. Did anyone confirm where he was in the 36 hours before he checked in? A very long silence. No, Watanabe said. We confirmed the alibi. We didn't look at what came before it. Part 8, the second man. It took until 9 p.m. for analysts and a warrant for Thomas Callum's historical cell records to find him. Nora and Priya sat in the incident room with the data spread across 2 screens and a printed timeline on the whiteboard, and they built it piece by piece the way you build something you know is true before you can prove it. Thomas Callum's phone had pinged a cell tower in Whistler, British Columbia, on the Thursday before Andrea's death. He had been there for 22 hours. He had told Andrea, according to her texts, that he was at a work site in Burnaby. In Whistler, the cell records placed him at a hotel. The hotel had records. The records showed a reservation under the name James Hale, the first appearance of the name he would later make legally his own. The reservation was for 2 people. The second guest had signed in as Cole Bertrand. Bertrand, Priya said. Nora looked at her. The Bertrands, Priya said. The family that owns the cottage on Lake Simcoe. The one Marcus told Celine was his family's cottage. The room got very quiet. He didn't invent the name randomly, Nora said. He used the name of someone he knew, someone connected to the Whistler trip. She was already reaching for her phone. Pull everything on a Cole Bertrand, connection to Whistler, British Columbia, 2018. The result came back in 40 minutes. Cole Bertrand was 38 years old. He currently lived in Barrie, Ontario, 45 minutes north of Toronto. He had a record, 2 counts of assault, 1 conviction, served 18 months, released 2017. He was, according to his parole records, a former private security contractor. He was also, according to a credit card record from February 13th. Last night in Toronto, Nora looked at Priya. He didn't do it himself, she said. He never does it himself. That is how he keeps the alibi clean. She stood. Where is Marcus Hale right now? Still in the interview room. Lawyer's been in and out. Keep him there. Nora grabbed her coat. I need a unit at Cole Bertrand's hotel now, and I need the Canoe restaurant security footage, specifically the parking structure and the street-level cameras for a 4-block radius from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. You think Bertrand picked Celine up? I think Marcus Hale took his wife to a romantic Valentine's Day dinner on the 54th floor of a building. Made sure they were seen together, made sure he drove her home, made sure he was accounted for all evening. And then Cole Bertrand came to the house and took her while Marcus was in his study with the door closed. She paused. The red dress. Celine changed out of her dinner dress when she got home. She didn't choose to put on a red dress at midnight to go for a walk. Someone made her change, someone who had time to be theatrical about it. Why the red dress? Nora thought about it. Because he wanted it to look romantic. If she jumped, if the staging had worked, it would have looked like a woman in a red dress on Valentine's Day who couldn't face her marriage anymore. A beautiful, sad story. No investigation. She pulled on her coat. He thinks in aesthetics. He is an architect. Everything has to look right. Part 9, Cole. They found Cole Bertrand at a Holiday Inn on King Street West at 10:14 p.m. He did not run, which told Nora he hadn't been warned yet. Which meant Marcus Hale still believed he was walking out of 52 Division tonight. Cole Bertrand was broad, quiet, with the particular stillness of someone who'd learned to take up as little emotional space as possible in a room. He'd been watching television. He opened the door when they knocked and looked at the badges and stepped back without being asked. He was not a psychopath. That was the first thing Nora understood about him. He was something more ordinary and in some ways more depressing. A man who had learned that his particular skills had a market and had stopped asking questions about the customers. He asked for a lawyer. Nora said, of course. While they waited for the lawyer, she sat across from him in the hotel room and said nothing. He said nothing. The television was still on, a hockey game. The Leafs down by 2 in the third period. When the lawyer arrived, Nora put 3 photographs on the table. The first was Celine Hale. The second was Andrea Moy-Callum. The third was Cole Bertrand's cell record showing him in Whistler, BC in March 2018. The Vancouver file is being reopened today, Nora said. Both cases, 1 actor. The question for you right now in this room is whether you are the hired hand or the architect. She paused. Those are 2 very different places to be standing when this is finished. Cole Bertrand looked at the photographs for a long time. He looked at Andrea Moy-Callum for longer than the others. She wasn't supposed to, he started, then stopped. His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Cole Bertrand looked at Nora. Something moved through his face that had the texture of a man who had been carrying something heavy for 6 years and had just been offered the chance to put it down. He told me she'd be unconscious, he said. In Vancouver, he told me she'd be unconscious, and I just had to. He said she wouldn't feel it. His voice was very flat. She wasn't unconscious. The room was very still last night, Nora said quietly. Celine, He closed his eyes. He said the same thing. Part 10. The architect. She went back to interview room 2 at 11:30 p.m. Thomas Callum. She would not call him Marcus Hale again, not even in her head. Was still there. Still composed. Diana Chu had left an hour ago, replaced by a senior partner from the firm. The new lawyer was very expensive and very calm and said nothing when Nora sat down. Nora put the Whistler cell records on the table. She put the Canoe restaurant exterior camera footage. A still, time-stamped 11:48 p.m. showing Cole Bertrand's rental car parked on Wellington Street on the table. She put Andrea Moy Callum's photograph on the table. She put Celine's photograph beside it. Thomas Callum looked at the photographs. He looked at them for a long time. Then he looked up at Nora. And she saw it again, that flicker, that almost admiration, that particular quality of a mind that encounters another mind and registers it the way a sensor registers something entering its range. "You were good," he said. "Your wife was better," Nora said. Something shifted. Small, the first genuine crack in the composure. "She kept a notebook," Nora said. 4 months of notes. She found the other passport. She found the Vancouver article. She photographed everything and she left it somewhere. She knew you'd never think to look. She paused. She was going to go to the police. She had already gone to a lawyer. Not about the will, about you. That appointment was scheduled for February 20th. She let that sit. You were 6 days too late to stop it, even if last night had worked. The crack widened, imperceptibly, but she saw it. "She loved you," Nora said. "She wrote that in the notebook too. She said she wanted it on record. Even after she knew what you were, she wanted it on record that she'd loved who she thought you were." She looked at him steadily. "I've been trying to understand that all day. A woman that smart, that careful, and she still don't," he said. The first word he'd spoken in 20 minutes. "Don't what? Don't reduce her to that." His voice had something in it now that hadn't been there before. Raw, almost human. She wasn't. She was the most. He stopped. Nora looked at him and understood, for the first time, the thing Watanabe had tried to describe, the offense, the unbearable quality of someone else's fullness. He had married Celine Marchetti because she was luminous and complete, and it had drawn him the way a void is drawn toward substance. Not to love it, to consume it. And somewhere in the consumption, something that might have been love in a person built differently had twisted into the need to extinguish what he couldn't contain. "Thomas," Nora said quietly, "Cole Bertrand has been talking for 45 minutes. The composure came back immediately, like a shutter closing. But it was too late. She had seen behind it. She gathered her photographs. She was meticulous, Nora said at the door. "Your wife, both of your wives," she turned back one last time. "They deserved more time." She left him sitting there. Part 11. After Priya found her in the parking structure at midnight, sitting on the hood of her car looking at the Toronto skyline. "Bertrand's giving everything," Priya said. "Vancouver and last night." His lawyer negotiated before he even finished his first sentence. She leaned against the car beside Nora. "Callum's lawyer is trying to manage the damage, but there is not much to manage. We've got cell records, we've got Bertrand's testimony, we've got the notebook, we've got the Vancouver reopening." She paused. "It is a good case." "It is Celine's case," Nora said. "She built it. We just found where she left it." Priya was quiet for a moment. Why didn't she run? She had 4 months. Nora had been thinking about that all day. "Because running would have meant he was still out there," she said finally. And she knew what he was. She knew there would be someone else after her. She looked at the skyline. She wasn't just trying to save herself. She was trying to stop him. A pause. She just ran out of time. The city hummed around them, indifferent and enormous. "She updated the will 8 months ago," Nora said. "She started the notebook 4 months ago. At some point in between, she made a decision. She decided she was going to be the one who ended this. She paused. She was braver than almost anyone I've ever encountered. She is dead, Priya said, not harshly, just precisely. Yes, Nora said, she is. She was quiet for a moment. Brave doesn't mean it works out. It just means you decided something mattered more than your own safety. She slid off the hood of the car. She was right about that, by the way. It did matter. It does matter. He will not do this to anyone else. She looked at Priya. Make sure the case file notes that the evidence was compiled by Celine Marchetti Hale, she said. By name, I don't want her to be the victim in the file. I want her to be the investigator. Priya nodded once. Nora got in the car. Part 12. Nora. She drove back to her borrowed apartment in Kensington Market through streets that were cold and quiet, February holding the city in its particular gray grip. She thought about Thomas Callum and the thing she had seen behind his composure when she said Celine's name. The crack, the almost human flicker. She had been trying to categorize it all evening, and she still couldn't. It wasn't love. It wasn't grief. It was something more like the response of a man who had encountered something he couldn't fully process. Someone who had outmaneuvered him not with power or force, but with patience and clarity and the stubborn decision to leave a record. She thought about Celine sitting in her office at Gallery Marchetti, buying 3 new notebooks, writing the first line in careful angular script, "He is not real." She thought about what it cost to keep writing after that, to keep going to dinner, to keep sleeping in the same house, to keep building the case piece by piece while the man across the breakfast table watched her with pale gray eyes. She thought about Kiko Watanabe, keeping the file in her desk drawer for 4 years after retirement because she knew, and she could not let it go. She thought about Andrea Moy Callum, who had not had 4 months of warning, who had been 30 minutes further along in the same story and hadn't known it. She parked outside her building. She sat in the car for a while. The job on its best days was also a form of love. She had thought that before about other cases in other cities. The decision to keep looking at something painful and not turn away from it. Celine Marchetti Hale had understood that instinctively she had been doing the job before anyone knew there was a job to do. Nora owed her a good case. She would build it well, piece by piece, the way Celine had taught her to, not with power but with patience, not with force but with precision. She got out of the car. She went inside. She did not open the case file that night. She put it on the table and she looked at it for a moment, and she thought about a woman in a red dress who had not jumped, who had been careful and brave and had run out of time by 6 days. She thought, I will finish what you started. Then she went to bed. Thomas Ray Callum tried under both names, a legal decision that the Crown prosecutor argued successfully, and that Nora privately thought Celine would have appreciated, was convicted 14 months later. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. He received life without the possibility of parole for 25 years. He would be 59 before he could apply. Cole Bertrand pleaded guilty to 2 counts of second-degree murder. He received life with eligibility after 15 years. Before sentencing, he asked to make a statement. He addressed it to Andrea Moy Callum's family and to Celine's sister Gabriella, who sat in the front row of the gallery and did not look away from him once. He said, I told myself I didn't know. I knew. Gabriella Marchetti inherited her sister's estate. She kept the gallery open. She renamed one of the rooms. It is called the Marchetti Room now. The plaque beside the door reads for Celine, who saw something wrong and could not look away from it. Sergeant Kiko Watanabe flew in from Vancouver for the verdict. She sat beside Nora in the courtroom. When the foreman read the word guilty, she did not react visibly. She had spent too long waiting for it to be surprised by it. Afterward, outside on the courthouse steps, she said to Nora, How did you find the Priya-Libby gap? The 36 hours before Calgary. He is an engineer, Nora said. He overbuilds. His alibis are too load-bearing. There is always something structural underneath that he had to put in place first. She paused. You look for what came before the thing that is supposed to convince you. Watanabe looked at her for a moment. You are the second kind of detective, she said. The kind that sees the people. Someone told me that once, Nora said. I am still not sure if it is a compliment. It is both, Watanabe said. That is the problem with it. They stood on the courthouse steps and watched Toronto go about its February business. People moving fast through the cold breath clouding, the city indifferent and enormous and full of lives going on. Nora thought about Celine in her office, writing the first line. She thought, he is not real, she thought. You were. She walked back to her car, and she drove through the city, and the February light fell across Toronto the way it always does, thin and gray and somehow, stubbornly, still light. Still light, always still light. Detective Norah Voss returned to New Haven in March. She took a case in April. She is still working.